Well, it's all been a bit quiet this week, hasn't it? But I bet that won't last for very long. Yes, welcome along to this week's Women's Football Chats. My name is Chris Gadsby. I'm here every Thursday at 6 p.m, bringing you the very latest from the third and fourth tiers of women's football here in England. That's the FA Women's National League and the 6 divisions within it. And as I said in that intro, there it has been considerably quiet compared to recent weeks. There isn't a great deal to discuss on this week's show. We haven't had the determining round draw. I've been told by the FA that is coming next week, so we'll have the determining round rundown on next week's show. But teams have just been ticking along, playing pre-season friendlies, suddenly not playing pre-season friendlies again because they get cancelled or what have you, and signing their squad ready for the new season. It has been somewhat of a quiet week in the FAWNL, so this is going to be a considerably shorter show as there aren't fixtures results to go through. There's not any major league news coming through, so we have 4 pieces of news to discuss. We're going to start then in Division 1 South East. Sorry, 5 pieces really. We're going to start in Division 1 South East with a piece of news from Queen's Park Rangers that broke last week, last Thursday, in between recording the show and putting the show out. And that is that Danny Harrigan has been appointed head coach of Queen's Park Rangers Women, replacing Steve Quashie, who has become Women and Girls Technical Lead. Now, you'll remember on last week's show, spoke about Queen's Park Rangers moving ground. So they've moved ground and got themselves a new head coach. Harrigan worked with QPR Girls between 2011 and 2013 and was women's reserve team manager for 2 years before leaving in 2019 to become manager at Actonians, where he was for 4 years, but spent the second half of last season as first team coach with Wycombe. Now, Harrigan has said that he's really pleased. It's always been an ambition of his, and QPR Women has moved under the umbrella of the club, so it's now about changing the mentality of the group. The club wants to create an elite pathway for the girls coming through, and bringing the women to Heston for training completely changes everything, and that is a big statement from the club. We covered that on last week's show. QPR CEO Christian Nuri said, "We are delighted to appoint Danny as the new head coach. He has strong connections with the club and is a familiar face to many, understanding the ambitions. He joins with a wealth of experience in the women's game, and his extensive network is already helping to shape our staff and player structure. The appointment comes at an exciting time of transition and alignment as we continue to evolve and develop." He also takes the opportunity to thank Steve Quashie, who helped lead the team in previous seasons and will remain involved as part of the technical staff. So, new head coach for Queen's Park Rangers. While we're discussing head coaches, then might as well talk about the new head coach at Watford, which was announced late this morning. Watford is delighted to have confirmed the appointment of Renee Hector as women's head coach. The former defender, whose career started in the Watford youth ranks aged 10, moves from her previous role as head of the Hornets head of youth development, which saw them get to the Hertfordshire Senior Cup final last year. And after success in her playing days with Watford and also Charlton, Tottenham, winning promotion to the Super League with Tottenham in 2019, and also as part of England's elite coaching programme, she coached the Lionesses under-17s to Mima Cup victory in February. So with pre-season underway, Hector says that she's excited for the campaign. "This is a dream come true. I don't know when, but I always hoped one day I would manage this football club, the club that's dearest to my heart amongst my playing and coaching career. I've been affiliated with the club for around 18 years, and I'm so grateful they've put trust in me to lead this extremely talented group of players. The coaching staff and players have been so supportive. One thing for sure, I will give it everything I have. So Helen Ward, who of course knows Renee very well from their time on the pitch for several seasons, says that having worked with the first team at the back end of last season, we're delighted Renee's taking up the head coach role. With her long history at Watford as both a player and a coach, we believe Renee is the perfect person to drive the standards and philosophy of our club forward. She has shown great leadership in her role with the development team. Preparations for the new season have already begun with Renee at the helm. So Ward has moved across from general manager to take the newly created role of head of women's football. And so there's a lot of change going on at Watford as well. Now, 2 head coach changes there in the FAWNL this week. Let's move on to we'll go from the south, we'll go from kind of the east and London area across to southwest. Bournemouth Sports, who we had on the show a few weeks ago, and they have set up a GoFundMe, essentially to be able to play in the FAWNL. They say on their GoFundMe page, which is currently, as recording this, at £1,645, Bournemouth Sports have shown that ambition and hard work in grassroots women's football can propel even the smallest community clubs to the national stage. Last season, through their inclusive, social yet competitive approach, the Bournemouth Sports first team gained promotion to the Women's National League by winning the Southern Region Premier Division. However, we need your help to be accepted by the FA. Now, this isn't about playing in the league. This is about where they're going to play. In getting a 5th promotion since being formed in 2013, so 11 years ago now, this small, self-funded, volunteer-run community club has arrived on the big stage. But there exists a barrier to playing that we can't overcome without the community. Our home ground for the past 11 seasons has now been deemed unsuitable for the National League, and whilst pre-season has begun and the players return to training with renewed optimism, behind the scenes the backroom staff are working to meet the new minimum standards required by the National League so that our squad can fulfil the opportunity promotion has offered. Our goal is to raise £6,000 to upgrade our ground to ensure we provide the minimum ground standards as laid out by the National League. By supporting, you will be contributing to a small club as it navigates its way through a new era of National League football, including 2 local derbies against AFC Bournemouth's women's team. So as I said, so far they've raised £1,600, and it was really interesting when they were on a few weeks ago to hear about those challenges that they've been having. And it brings about, again, this discussion of, they have done so well. They've got so many promotions in relatively quick succession, being runners up a lot of the time. And it strikes me it's similar to Stourbridge in the Northern Premier Division. Stourbridge went back to back to back and ended up 3 years after they were in Tier 6, they were in Tier 3, and the challenges that they've had coming along with that. And it seems like Bournemouth Sports have got a relatively similar situation, but they've just not been able to keep up with what the demands for Tier 4 is. Now, I do understand that from speaking to a couple of clubs that the ground criteria and the minimum criteria has been increased for this season and is now more difficult for some clubs, if they don't already have it, to get there. So I haven't seen this year's handbook, don't know what those ground criteria are. Be great if I could get my hands on it, because then I could go and compare what the differences are between those from last year's ground grading to this year's ground grading. But it seems that we have this as the FAWNL wants to become professional is the wrong word, but maybe it is at the same time, in that they are, yes, it's still an amateur league, but they don't want to be perceived as just doing things off the cuff. They want some rules and criteria set in about how the games are going to go about, which is a good thing. And then you get a team, because I've spoken to two of the teams coming up now, Bournemouth Sports and Cheadle Town. Hopefully got another one on the way soon, and both of them have said this is going to be very difficult. We kind of didn't really plan and expect to be here. It's causing some issues, but we'll give it a good go. And I think that's, there are not many teams in tiers 5, 6, 7 with huge ambitions in the short and even medium term to be a tier 3 side, for example. So sometimes when you do end up, I'm not saying that obviously they don't want to be promoted. What I'm saying is that, like Bournemouth Sports, for example, they told us that they were only ever expecting to be a regional side, a tier 5 side, and then they have 1 year where everything comes together, and now they're having to try and raise the money to be able to compete in tier 4 and just have the ground available to play in tier 4. So it is going to be difficult. £6,000, is a significant chunk of money for these teams, when income realistically comes from the FA Cup and ticket sales. And a lot of that, if you don't own your ground and your home, a lot of that will go back into renting that out. So it's an interesting one, and hopefully they're able to get the ground criteria they want, because the last thing we want is for things to be made even more difficult for teams like Bournemouth Sports to be able to play in the FAWNL, because that then to me runs the risk of the FAWNL kind of closing itself off to teams who have got there on merit and deserve an opportunity to, even if it is just for one season. Look at Torquay last year, for example. Even if they are, they give it a good go for one season, fall just short and drop back down again, they ought to have the opportunity, perhaps, particularly if it's a final day thing and things like that. There needs to be some sort of grace period, for example, and a level of acceptance among all the clubs that a couple of the things at this new club that have just got in and are trying to find the money and are trying to do their best aren't quite there at the moment. But hopefully that things aren't made too difficult for Bournemouth Sports. Right, two things left to go with then. We will go now to Talking Woso's Club Map, which is a resource I use once a week at least. And Craig does a brilliant job with this every single year. If you go on at Talking Woso on X, you will see all of the clubs are mapped out with their home ground or primary home ground addresses on there, help you find them. You can see where the teams are in relation to each other. And one thing that's really interesting this year is obviously losing Newcastle out of the Northern Premier Division is just how compact the North is in comparison to the Southern Premier Division this year. Of course, obviously the country kind of spreads out, doesn't it? As you get kind of further down south, when you go over towards Wales and Devon and Cornwall and the like, and all the way over to East Anglia, it's very thin at the top and then kind of almost does that. But without those then long trips up to the northeast. So you've got in the Northern Premier Division, Leeds is the top, which is kind of level with the Humber and just north of Manchester and kind of Blackpool area there. And then it goes down to Coventry. So it's really only a very compact Northern Premier Division. Whereas the Southern Premier Division, you've then got Plymouth over, not far away from as far as you can get over in one direction, and then Ipswich not far as, as pretty much as close as you can get over in the other direction. So really spread out Southern Premier Division, really compact Northern Premier Division. The Tier 4 is actually relatively close as well. You look at, other than the trips up to the northeast in Division 1 North, the rest of the teams are all fairly compact around that Manchester, Leeds, York kind of area. The Midlands, plenty around Birmingham, Nottingham up to Sheffield is the furthest you've got to go. Obviously having two teams in Lincoln really helps there. South East, other than Norwich, you're pretty much all in London. You might have to pop up 40 minutes up the M1 over towards Cambridge and Milton Keynes and the likes, but other than Norwich, everything's pretty compact. And then Southwest is kind of in two bands, really. There's one band that is along the M4 that goes all the way. You've got your Swindons in there, your Portishead, Bridgewaters, all around in that area. And then you've got your South Coast teams, your Worthing, your Southampton Women's, your Bournemouth Sports, Moneyfields and the like. So, plenty of really local games in Tier 4. And again, even in the Northern Premier Division, you've got, when you look at your Forests to Derby, Stoke, Wolves, West Brom, Stourbridge, Rugby Borough, very compact in the Midlands, and then the trips up, to the likes of Burnley and Hull and the like. So it really does give you a good indication of the travel that some of these teams are going to have to do next season. So yes, do check that out. Keep your eye on that as well, because grounds seem to be changing all of the time. So we will now go to the conclusion to the Women's Football Chat Summer Knockout 2024. Right then, so after 2 months of intense competition and 72 FAWNL sides being taken down to just the final two, it was an all Tier 3 final between Halifax and Nottingham Forest. And the favourite FAWNL side, the country's favourite FAWNL side, is Halifax, who won with 62.13% of the votes. It was a great competition and went off without a hitch. Thank you to everybody who voted. Not sure entirely how many votes we got over the course of the entire competition, but it looks as though it was well over 2,000. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Again, just a bit of fun that we do over summer to kind of make the the summer period pass with a little bit of interest in it as well. And also, of course, to show the FAWNL, please video the draws. It's so easy to do. I'll even come and do it for you if you want me to. Yeah, thank you so much to everyone for voting in the Summer Knockout Tournament, and congratulations to Halifax. Speaking of draws then, breaking news that's happening while I'm recording this show, which is currently on Thursday. It's currently 1:30. So I contacted the FA earlier on this week and said, when is the determining round draw going to be? And I got a response that said it's going to be later this week, i.e. today or tomorrow, and then got another one back very quickly, said, my apologies, it's going to be early next week. Now, 15 minutes ago, Stourbridge have put out that they have been drawn away to Boldmere St Michael's in the determining round. Game taking place week commencing 26th of August. We know they're all going to be local fixtures because it's being played midweek, so you've got to be within that window. So what happened? Did either have Stourbridge jumped the gun, which I suspect because no other club has put theirs out that they've done that, or has something gone awry somewhere with communication and the whole determining round draw is about to come out as soon as I finished recording? We'll wait and see. But yeah, so the determining round draw will definitely be done by next week's show, and then we'll bring you that determining round draw, as I said, at the end of August. Interestingly, of course, that is being played midweek. None of the others are. So there's a couple of gaps on the board because round one is on the 29th of September. So at the moment, nobody's got a league game because we're assuming they're all going to be in league and plate. But because the plate is optional, if enough teams have pulled out of the plate and they're all in the plate, you could put a league game in there. Fixtures will move around. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so after saying in the intro, it's been a bit of a quiet week, not a lot's going to happen, but I don't expect it's going to be quiet for very long. By the time I've got from the start of recording the show to 20 minutes later at the end of recording the show, we've got one team that have put their cup draw out, and so everything seems a little bit up in the air as to when exactly this draw is going to come out. So if the full draw, and I really doubt it is, but if the full draw comes out in an hour or so, and in fact actually that tweet has now been deleted, so I think it was Stourbridge that jumped the gun there, but there we go. So I think that the determining round draw is going to be as planned on Monday, probably next week, most likely midday. And we'll cover all of that on next week's show. But that will about do it for this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. Thank you very much for watching and or listening. Of course, pre-season continuing throughout the next few weeks before we get to the 18th of August. So thank you very much for watching and or listening to this week's episode of the Women's Football Chat. If you want to like and subscribe, if you subscribe to the channel, you can even tick the notifications box and then you'll get a message every Thursday at 6 p.m. when the show goes live. I'll be back with that full draw and any other news that's gone on in the next 7 days in the F8 WNL. But for now, goodbye.